Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media, St. Louis's home for arts, education, and culture.
Today on Spotlight, the interesting foods introduced at the World's Fair and why rice had a starring role. Plus, St. Louis is full of several greenways, where they are and how they bring people together. And then a place where playwrights can see their work performed on stage. But first, one man's inspiring story about achieving greatness in the early days of swimming. It's Sunday, and you're watching the multiple Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
Good sports stories are never about sports. They're always about the human element.
Above the surface, it seemed like Charles Daniels had everything a person could want. But below the surface lurked a sea of personal troubles for which swimming would become the cure.
He was not good at sports. He was not a good athlete. His father was one of the rare people who knew how to swim. So we threw him in and said swim, and he nearly drowned. But when his father left him, I think he always wanted to prove himself to his dad.
Charles Daniels would grow up to prove himself to the world, and along the way help propel America's rise to dominance in Olympic swimming from its very modest beginnings at the start of the 20th century.
We had 75 million people back then. Only 600 swam competitively, and not very well. And the English and the Australians and really the Europeans were so much better than us.
St. Louis author and sports attorney Michael Lloyd spent 2 years researching the life of Charles Daniels, including the critical part the 1904 St. Louis Olympics played in his rise to international fame at a time when competitive swimming was a very different sport.
Back then, even in pools, they didn't have lane lines, they didn't have chlorine, they didn't have gutters, so they were dealing with all kinds of issues. And if you think about it, if you can't see the bottom of the pool and see a lane line, it's hard to swim in a straight line.
Lloyd's new book, The Waterman, is the untold story of an American sports hero whose unfailing humility left him virtually forgotten, even to those who followed in his wake.
The wonderful thing about researching this book, I got to talk with some amazing swimmers like Mark Spitz, John Neighbor, Matt Biondi.
Did those famous swimmers know the story of Charles Daniels? Did they even know his name?
They vaguely knew his name, but they had no idea everything he did. It's a wonderful story. I think people will be thoroughly entertained, and I think it's his just due.
So Charles Daniels grows up to be a good swimmer, a competitive swimmer, and he ends up here in St. Louis.
He does. So the 1904 World's Fair at the Olympics was the first major international event that he competed in. It was actually the first real international swimming event we had in the United States. And unlike a lot of the other Olympic sports activities at the time, a lot of foreigners participated in swimming. And a lot of people showed up to watch. Normally, the championships got only about 100 people to come and watch because nobody really cared. But there was a horrible steamship accident in New York that killed about 1,000 people. It was the worst disaster in New York history until the Twin Towers. And that got people thinking about swimming because women and children died just 50 yards from the side, and had they only known how to swim or float, they would have survived. So people started getting interested in swimming, and he was there, and he was just starting to make a name for himself, and he won 5 medals here, 3 gold. And again, now the English and the Australians weren't here, which was another issue, but he made a name for himself, and he broke one of the England's world records, which they denied, but he did, and it was pretty amazing.
The gold medals for swimming were smaller?
They were small. They were like a $50 size. And one other point of wonderful fact for St. Louis, the gold medal started here. Before then, it didn't exist.
What does swimming owe to Charles Daniels today?
I'm sure from him, because he's so humble, he'd say nothing. I was happy to be the person that move that forward, and Godspeed everybody else. So I don't know if it does, but I do think I would love people to see where the origins of swimming came from, and just again, the hope and determination and the obstacles that this one person had to overcome to make it a cultural institution for all of us.
To find out about the swimming stroke he invented that is still used today, watch the full interview at hecmedia.org.
HEC Media. Recognized, celebrated, honored time and again for excellence in the industry. HEC Media has been bringing home the hardware for over a decade. Arts and education to author talks, magazine shows and documentaries, individual craft achievements to overall excellence. Find all of the award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
History Spotlight, brought to you by HEC Media and the Missouri Historical Society.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jody Sowell from the Missouri Historical Society, and this is History Spotlight. You may feel that you know a lot about the 1904 World's Fair, but did you know that it was famous for unique restaurants? Public historian Adam Kloppe tells us more.
The World's Fair is one of the signature events in St. Louis's history. In 1904, over 19 million people visited to attend the World's Fair, where over 60 nations came and displayed, goods and technological innovations. There were temporary buildings built for this fair, these iconic structures. And it's so easy to find pictures of those buildings that sometimes other attractions at the World's Fair get a little bit lost. And I think one of the most fascinating things about the World's Fair is the food and the restaurants that introduce new kinds of food to St. Louis or serve food in interesting places. Everybody knows about the World's Fair Ferris wheel, right? One of the largest, most iconic structures. But what some people might not know is that the Ferris wheel was so popular that people were renting it out for banquets and weddings and things like that. They eventually, over the course of the fair, renamed one of the cars on the Ferris wheel Diner. And you could rent it out for an evening and have a banquet on there. So that became popular enough that they were just like, you know what, we're gonna dedicate a part of this attraction to food and to restaurant service. One of my favorite restaurants at the fair is the Louisiana and Texas Rice Kitchen. It was this little food stand near one of the main gates to the fair. And it ended up being one of the most popular restaurants at the fair. It was put on by a rice growers association that was based in the United States. And they were really trying to use this stand to popularize rice in America. Every dish the restaurant served came with a side of rice. All of their bread was made from rice. All of their desserts were made from rice. Their menus had testimonials on them about how good rice was for you. It also had rice-based recipes in the menu. So they really used this to popularize rice, and it kind of worked. A lot of people ate at that restaurant and came away thinking about rice as a dish that maybe they hadn't before. There's also all sorts of other restaurants at the fair. There were fine dining options, like at the Luchau Faust restaurant in the Tyrolean Alps. This was an attraction where there were man-made mountains in the background that recreated a scene in the Alps. And there was this huge restaurant in there that seated hundreds and hundreds of people. Guests were entertained by a 100-piece band. You could eat a 3 or 4 course meal. You could have beer and wine in this place. It was really, really this popular spot. But then there's also restaurants that are more themed at sort of a kitschier audience, if you will. One of my favorites is called the Anthracite Coal Restaurant. And it was in a mining exhibit at the fair. And you actually had to take an elevator down below the ground to get into this restaurant. And once you were in there, all the tables, all the walls, everything was made out of anthracite coal. And so you could eat underground in this restaurant. The waiters walked around, they had little hard hats on with lights on them like you were in a mine. And they didn't serve like fancy food. They served what they were called Dutch lunches, which was just like sandwiches and stuff. So it wasn't like fine dining, but you could eat in this different looking place and you could go anywhere in St. Louis. It's this really fascinating story about the way that people were trying to use food to interact with these exhibits at the fair. And I think things like that are so exciting.
Next week on History Spotlight, learn about Arthur Kennedy Jr., the trailblazing speedboat racer whose accomplishments continue to inspire.
To learn more about the Missouri Historical Society, visit mohistory.org.
Go to hecmedia.org for the arts and authors,
Completely accidental because I never set out to write a book.
science and history, culture and community,
It's considered to be the oldest organic farm west of the Mississippi.
education, films,
Finding the coin places the site firmly in the 13th century.
what's happening now around St. Louis, and more. See for yourself at hecmedia.org.
For more St. Louis stories, subscribe to the HEC YouTube channel. Spotlight STL from HEC Media.
One of my favorite greenways is the Sunset Greenway. It's a beautiful trail that meanders down to the Missouri River.
I love Deer Creek Greenway because it's a beautiful design that I have been able to participate in. I also like Merrimack Greenway because it's near my home, so that's where I go with my family.
One of my favorite greenways, it's hard not to love the Brick Line. I mean, it's such a transformative project in St. Louis. Definition of a greenway, I think, that's something I get quite a bit. I don't find it's always a very well-defined parameter. I think the most recognizable part of a greenway is the pathway, but it's everything that's accompanying it. It's the trail amenities that might be with it, whether that's restrooms or benches or bike repair stations. It's the landscaping. We've got a number of greenways that go through well-established and long-term beloved parks in our region.
My history with Great Rivers Greenway goes back to the year 1999, actually, when I worked for an organization called St. Louis 2004, which was an opportunity to make St. Louis a better place to live, work, and play. And one of the initiatives that came out of that project was the Proposition C, which is Clean Water, Safe Parks, and Community Trails Initiative, that actually created Great Rivers Greenway. It's really great to have come full circle on this effort, to have seen the organization grow over this past almost 25 years has been really incredible.
When I work with municipalities, I talk to them as if GRG is a public agency, so we get funded by the local tax, federal grants, and private donations. I explain to them that it is our contribution. We are paying for these parks and trails in the region, and it is ours to love, to use, and to maintain.
So when I first started, I think we had around 100 miles of greenways. So we're over 138 miles perhaps at this point in time. The Brick Line is the newest greenway that we came online.
The Brick Line Greenway is a public-private partnership which intends to connect 4 of our major institutions, our major parks, and hundreds of destinations in between, and 14 St. Louis City neighborhoods. And I think that's the most exciting thing, is that we're bringing all of these different places together, but we're bringing people together. We have an opportunity to make certain that the people of St. Louis have something that they can love and cherish and treasure, but also brag about and tell the broader community about.
And what's really exciting is when I first started, I don't recall us having any greenways that actually intersected. And then since that time, we've had a few that have now come together. And so that's really exciting to see those connections and those dots on the map really come together.
It's important for the communities to have spaces like the greenways because this is an opportunity to get outdoors, to explore nature, to get exercise, to train for a marathon, to learn how to ride a bike.
It is very important to have open spaces, greenways, parks, and access to them for everybody to, enjoy fresh air. I see it as an opportunity to exercise, to improve our mental health, to have access to beautiful features that we are, building for the public.
Let's go!
One of the things that we heard from a community member not too long ago was that being able to participate in the planning and design of a greenway project really helped her to look across not just her neighborhood, but the neighborhoods surrounding her neighborhood, and saying how much in common that the neighborhoods have and how they could work together. She saw that as an opportunity to partner in other ways that they weren't partnering before.
And I love that we're leaving this legacy for our kids, and the parks and trails that are being built are part of our legacy here.
St. Louis, we're at the tip of a major transformation where we've got exciting projects, we've got lots of great collaboration here, knowing that Great Rivers Greenway has in hand and an opportunity to help to promote and push that transformation, to get us to that next step, to make certain that we're a place where the region, the state, the country will then look at and say, hey, you know what, I want to go to St. Louis because they're doing incredible, transformative things. But being a part of that really drives me.
Later on Spotlight, a local nonprofit dedicated to classical guitar.
Sammy calls me at the office out of the blue. I remember the story.
Our radio broadcast of 3 years wasn't entirely fictitious.
Pop killed him. Oh,
Back when First Run started, it was felt that in the St. Louis region there were a lot of active interest in playwriting, but there's never anywhere to see your things put on, because people will go and see Shakespeare or a lot of different playwrights over and over again, but to take the chance on putting on a new play, most theatre companies can't do that for various reasons. So it was thought, well, let's have a group that's all we do. We'll just put on first runs.
First Run was started by Dr. Don Weiss, who was trained as a psychologist, and he also became a writer, an entrepreneur, and also a playwright. He wanted to see his work done. Nobody puts on new plays, period, especially at this time, which is about, say, 2001 or so. And the whole point of First Run Theater was to produce new, unpublished, unproduced regional playwrights.
What is it?
Guacamole milkshakes. I'm serving them tonight at the slumber party.
Did you say guacamole?
Did you say slumber party? Oh, we're so excited. We're going to be...
I think it's really important to give new writers a voice and an opportunity to see their work performed on stage, whether it's a staged reading or a fully mounted production. I mean, there's probably nothing more valuable for a writer than to see how their script works on stage.
I sent my piece in. Yeah, I mean, it was hot off the presses, and I wanted to hear it. I wanted to see it, and thank goodness, because there is this wonderful, important developmental space for local writers. I mean, here's the thing. There's the writing, there's the sharing, and then there's the rewriting. And you can't rewrite until you really hear it. You really need to see how it lands.
And I trust you, and I need you to do this for me, for us. I know it seems strange.
To say the least.
New plays are submitted to us. We do not ask for them. We just say we are open to submissions. Just go ahead, send them in, and we look for 3 different types of plays. A full-length play, 2-act one that'll last a full evening's performance. 1 act, which is generally about 35 minutes to an hour. And the 10-minute play, and we have a whole festival devoted to these short plays that we do once a year.
A place like First Run is a kind of artistic family. Not only does it offer opportunities for playwrights and directors, but also you have to have actors who will read the work and bring it to life. So it's a place that younger, less experienced actors can come, but it's also a place where some people who have a lot of time on the stage come.
As an actor, you're pretty well guaranteed that this show's never been done before. And that's pretty cool, because you can step into a fresh role, interpret it completely, for the first time, pretty much lay the groundwork for that play and that role.
The difference between working on an established play and something from a brand new playwright, from a director's standpoint, it's very different. Something brand new, you don't have that backstory, and you have to work with the playwright, work with the actors, to find out what is this about and how do we communicate that to the audience in the best possible way.
We're really happy that we're still here after 20 years. There's obviously been some bumps in the road, but we're still here. So we're happy to be able to celebrate with actors and directors, anybody that's been involved with First Run and that have enjoyed what we have done. It's quite a leap of faith to come and see a playwright that you don't know, probably. There's a lot of wonderful theatre in St. Louis, so to choose to actually come to one of these events is quite a step. But we would like the audience to go away with a fresh understanding of the vast talent that's out there in the country, and to perhaps, give these people a chance.
This is theater. We're rehearsing a play. This is not real.
St. Louis's own Chuck Berry was the first musician ever inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame on January 23, 1986. Berry was an archetype for the music that would define the 20th century. Rolling Stones guitarist Keith Richards inducted Berry with the memorable line, "It's very difficult for me to talk about Chuck Berry because I lifted every lick he ever played."
The National Building Arts Center is a unique national institution. We harness large collections, a research library on the built environment and all of its allied arts, and the nation's largest collection of architectural artifacts. We use both collections to educate people on historic building crafts and trades, the larger social, political, and economic context of the built environment, and the path and future of historic preservation in the United States. Larry Giles was the foremost architectural salvage expert in the country, and he started self-trained in the 1970s, rehabbing historic houses, but eventually reclaiming building materials that were coming off of demolition piles. And in the early 2000s, he gave his collection to the predecessor to National Building Arts Center. In 2005, purchased the steel foundry where the center is located and began the work of making the museum. He created a one-of-a-kind museum facility here, and before his death in 2021, had finished building the library, had done a lot of major structural work and repair work on the foundry buildings, and set everything up to where we are today, where National Building Arts Center now has public access to the library, to some of the collections through tours and special events.
We have a very large variety of collections here at the National Building Arts Center. Everything from the architecture that you see, like the ornaments in front of a building, the terracotta and stone. But we also have things that you don't see and that you might not expect at a museum like this. Like we have plumbing and HVAC collections, we have some signage, we have structural steel, and kind of all of this is supplemented by a very extensive research library and archives. So we have books and journals and catalogs and papers that help us understand all of these different materials.
Here at National Building Arts Center, our longest term goal is to transform our beautiful large steel casting shed into a state-of-the-art museum facility. Now that is a 20 to 25 year process. In the medium term, we are working on other endeavors. Again, expanding access, increasing visibility and awareness of the library, trying to connect our collections to preservation and trade schools all over the country. There's a lot of people who don't even know we exist or don't know that you can come here 5 days a week. We also want to utilize our larger artifacts through partnerships. We started public tours in the fall of 2021, second Saturday of each month. And these are opportunities that people can use to explore a lot of our, we don't show you everything, but you get into a lot of areas that otherwise are not open. We don't allow people into our warehouses on a regular basis, not yet. We also have a lecture series this summer. We did this last year. For the lectures during and after our collections are open. They're not guided, but those are free events, and people can come in and kind of whet their curiosity and maybe hear some information from a speaker. Our website is nationalbuildingarts.org. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Our handle is the cumbersome @National Building Arts Center. We do try to answer inquiries that can be answered, through our library. So if you, want to know something about a building or your own house, we try to be very helpful. Come check it out.
HEC Media, bringing you culture and community. Find all of HEC's positive programming and award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
You can find the stories featured in today's show along with past episodes and more at hecmedia.org/spotlight.
St. Louis Classical Guitar is a nonprofit organization in the St. Louis area that focuses on performance and education and community engagement, all centered around guitar. Initially, it was a matter of local guitar players getting together and sharing the music, playing music for each other, and it's evolved into this concert series that we have with artists from all around the world. The education program has kind of blossomed out of it as well, from 0 to 18 schools and community centers. These are all things that have sort of evolved along the way.
The Guitar Orchestra is basically a way for people who are members of the St. Louis Classical Guitar Organization to come together and be able to play music in just a fun, relaxed setting with other guitar enthusiasts.
We come from all different backgrounds, and many of us are retired now, so we have more time to devote to this. But you'll find engineers and attorneys and mechanics. I mean, we're all different professions, but the music is what unites us. And we have a good camaraderie. Everybody gets along and has fun.
I started at 8, but huge gaps because, you have careers and other things. And so I went back to it a few years ago when I retired. But I've been playing throughout my life. I wasn't sure, but when I got there, it was really fun in that it's a circle of folks. Some of them are very good in the sense that they majored in music, classical guitar, and then others like me never did that. And they were patient, and we were in sections, and so everyone works together and enjoys it. And Mark does a great job of, I like to say, herding cats. We all have our moment.
It's set up where we all do quartet arrangements, basically, where we do 3, 4, 5 people in a part. And so we have camaraderie, and it's not all on our own shoulders to play and carry the music. We can all, as a group, make it with less stress and more fun.
The camaraderie and hearing other folks as they move along, and we have this joint effort to get it right on a project, and when it happens, you feel like a sense of accomplishment. So yeah, it's fun.
We all come together just to make beautiful music, and when you hear multiple guitar parts happening at once, but the music just kind of interlocks, and so you just get it with this wall of gorgeous sound.
Next week, meet Arthur Kennedy Jr., the trailblazing speedboat racer whose accomplishments continue to inspire. Plus, creating ice cream with liquid nitrogen in 45 seconds. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.